The bathrooms on 3 are a disgrace. Use that. Chop, chop.
Go deal with it before the guests get here. Bradford Coyle, equity partner at Whitlock. Marsh and Coyle, the most prestigious appellate litigation firm in the state. $340 million in annual revenue. 4 former state Supreme Court clerks on the masthead. A wall of bronze plaques in the lobby, commemorating 40 years of landmark wins, does not slow down as he says it. He is crossing the marble atrium of the firm's headquarters on a Friday evening. Tuxedo. Champagne flute already in hand? 90 minutes before the doors open on the firm's 40th anniversary gala, he sees a black woman in a plain navy pantsuit standing near the catering table, holding a leather folio, and his brain files her in under 1 second flat. Help! He does not stop. He picks up a folded white cloth napkin from the catering stack, and because his hands are full, and she is Times and staff, exists to receive things, he tosses it at her. It hits her shoulder and falls to the floor. And someone spilled wine by the elevators? Use that. Chop, chop. The woman is 61 years old. Her name is Eleanor Whitfield Baez. She has been awake since 5 a.m. She is, though no one in this building knows it, for another 2 hours. The firm's incoming senior counsel and director of appellate strategy, hired 6 weeks ago by the management committee on a contract worth $8 million a year. Set to be introduced from the podium tonight at 8:30 p.m. As the most consequential appellate mind this firm has brought through its doors in a generation. She is also, though times no one alive in this building knows it at all, the person who actually wrote Times Ramos v. Delacroix County, 1989, the landmark wrongful conviction reversal that put Whitlock, Marsh and Coyle on the map, that hangs framed in the lobby, that Bradford Coyle has cited in 214 subsequent briefs, that built his entire career. She wrote it in 1989 as an unpaid summer law clerk. Her name is on none of it. She looks down at the napkin on the marble. She does not pick it up. She does not raise her voice. I think there's been a misunderstanding, she says. There's no misunderstanding. Sweetheart. Bradford finally stops, turns, and the smile he puts on is the worst kind patient. Like he's explaining the weather to a child. I don't know how they do it at whatever agency sent you. But here, when a partner asks you to do something, you say, yes, sir, and you do it. You don't stand around. You don't hold meetings. He flicks 2 fingers at her folio. What is that? Your timesheet? Put it down. The wine? The elevators? Now, a cluster of junior associates near the bar has gone quiet. One of them, a second year named Priya Nair, takes a half step forward and then stops. The way you stop when you are 28 and have $190. 0 inches loans, and the man yelling is on the committee that decides your bonus. Eleanor's hands stay at her sides. Her grandmother's voice arrives behind her eyes, the way it always does in courtrooms, in waiting rooms, in marble atriums, exactly like this one. 40 years apart. Don't pick it up. Baby, the day you pick up what they throw, you've agreed with them. My name, she says, evenly, is Eleanor Whitfield Baez. I have a folio because I'm presenting tonight. Bradford laughs. It is not cruel. Exactly, it is worse than cruel. It is Times delighted. Your Times presenting, right. And I'm dancing the lead in Swan Lake. He turns to the associates, performing for them now. The way men like Bradford always find an audience. You see this? This is what's wrong with these agencies. They send someone to clean the floors, and she's read one self-help book, and now she presents. He turns back. Honey, I have been a partner here for 26 years. I can tell the difference between counsel and Times, cleaning Times from across a room with my eyes closed. You are not the first, and you will not be the last. Now, I'm going to count to 5. And then I'm calling building security. And they will remove Times you, and the agency will hear about it Monday. 1. A waiter setting glasses pauses. Priya lifts her phone an inch off the bar. Hesitates. And then, because some part of her already knows, begins to record. Tfo. Eleanor does not move toward the napkin. She bends. Ons picks up her folio higher against her chest and stands straight. 3. God, they really will send Times anybody. 4. Bradford raises his free hand and snaps his fingers twice. Hard. Toward the security desk, across the atrium. Hector. Yeah. I need. This woman walked out. She's not on the staff list, and she's refusing to work. Marguerite Okonkwo, 73. A retired appellate judge and the firm's most honored living alumna, she clerked here in 1971. The only black woman in the building for 9 years is standing by the lobby plaques with a glass of sparkling water. She has come early because at 73 you come early to everything. She sets her glass down on the plinth beneath the framed copy of Times Ramos v. Delacroix County. Bradford, she says. Across the atrium. You will stop this right now. Bradford glances over. Judge Okonkwo, with respect. This doesn't concern you. We've got an agency problem. I'll handle it. It concerns all of them. Marguerite does not sit, but she also does not cross the floor, because she is 73 and her hip will not carry her fast enough to matter. And she knows, she has known since 1971, exactly what this room does to women who look like the two of them, and how little a single raised voice can stop it once it has decided. Hector, the security guard, crosses the atrium. He stops in front of Eleanor. He is apologetic in the eyes and immovable in the shoulders. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me. She goes. She does not argue with Hector. Hector did not throw the napkin. She walks toward the service corridor with her folio against her chest and the white cloth still lying on the marble where it fell. And 41 people, in a building full of framed verdicts about justice, watch a black woman be escorted out for the crime of standing still. Real talk, that napkin is going to cost Bradford Coyle 1,100 billable hours. His name on the door. And the one case, he's bragged about at every dinner party for 36 years. Because the woman he just had walked out, wrote it. He's been quoting her in front of the Supreme Court for 3 decades. And he just told her to mop a floor. If you've ever had something thrown at you, a rag. A look. A word by someone who decided what you were before you opened your mouth. Type 1 word in the comments. We'll know what it means. Because what's coming, not one person in this atrium sees coming. We've got the receipts, including one from 1989 with no name on it. We're about to put the name back. To understand how a 61-year-old woman with a $1.8 million contract and the firm's own founding case in her bloodstream ended up being marched out by security, we have to go back. Not 6 weeks. Not 36 years. We have to go back to a summer, the summer of 1989, Eleanor Whitfield was 25. She had grown up in a railroad apartment over a laundromat on the east side. The daughter of a woman who pressed other people's shirts for 34 years, and a father she never met. She got into the state law school on a scholarship that covered tuition, and nothing else. And she worked 2 jobs to cover the nothing else. And in the summer between her second and third year, she took an unpaid clerkship at a small, hungry, 4-year-old firm called Whitlock and Marsh, because it was the only one that answered her letter. They gave her a windowless room in the back and a stack of files no one else wanted. One of those files was Times Ramos. Emilio Ramos was a 19-year-old warehouse worker who had been convicted of a murder on the strength of a single eyewitness and a confession taken over 14 hours without a lawyer. He had been in prison for 6 years. His appeal had been denied twice. The firm had taken the case pro bono, mostly for the press. And then when it became clear the case was a loser and the press had moved on, had quietly let it rot in the backroom stack. Where it landed on the desk of the unpaid summer clerk, Eleanor read the entire trial record in 9 days. She found it on the 10th, a suppression issue everyone had missed. A chain of precedent. Nobody had connected. A way to argue that the 14-hour confession was not just inadmissible, but that its admission had so poisoned the trial that the conviction could not stand, and underneath that, a structural argument about how the county's interrogation practices had produced a times pattern times of such confessions, disproportionately from poor defendants who looked like Emilio Ramos and like her. She wrote the brief, 81 pages. She wrote it nights and weekends, over 6 weeks, in the windowless room, on a borrowed typewriter, with her grandmother sitting in the corner some evenings, shelling peas into a bowl and saying nothing. Because her grandmother could not read a word of it but knew what it was to watch someone build a door out of nothing. She handed it to the junior associate assigned to supervise her, a 28-year-old named Bradford Coyle, who had not opened the file once in 4 months. Bradford read it over a weekend. On Monday, he walked into the senior partner's office and said, "I think I've found something on Times Ramos." The brief was filed under Bradford Coyle's signature. Eleanor's clerkship ended in August. She was thanked with a handshake and a letter of recommendation that misspelled her last name. She went back for her 3rd year. The appellate court heard Times Ramos, Times the following spring, and ruled for Emilio Ramos in a unanimous opinion that quoted the brief at length, the Times pattern, Times argument. The suppression chain. The line that would later be carved into the bronze plaque in the lobby. A conviction built on a coerced confession is not a verdict. It is an echo of the coercion that produced it. Eleanor wrote that line at 3A blank. M. In a windowless room. Bradford Coyle has it on a plaque with his name under it. Ramos. Por Fried Emilio Ramos. It also made the firm, Whitlock and Marsh, became Whitlock. Marsh and Coyle. Within 2 years, Bradford made the youngest partner in firm history on the strength of his Times. Ramos, Times brief. The firm built a 40-year appellate practice on the reputation that case created. Bradford Coyle has cited Times Ramos Times in 214 briefs. He has given a CLE lecture titled Drafting the Ramos Brief, a personal retrospective 11 times. He has never once said the name Eleanor Whitfield. Eleanor did not fall apart. That is not what her grandmother raised. She graduated. She could not get hired by a single big firm. She had the grades and the Times, Ramos Times clerkship on her resume. And somehow the interviews always ended the same way, so she hung her own shingle in a strip mall and did the work. Nobody else would. The wrongful convictions. The suppression fights. The poor defendants who looked like Emilio Ramos. Over 32 years, she overturned 41 convictions. She argued and won 2 cases before the United States Supreme Court. She married a high school history teacher named Tomas Baez, who died of a stroke in 2020 and whose reading glasses still sit on the kitchen windowsill where he left them. She became, quietly, without a single bronze plaque, one of the most consequential appellate lawyers in the country. 6 weeks ago, the management committee of Whitlock, Marsh & Coyle, under a new managing partner, a woman named Deborah Strand, who had spent 2 years trying to drag the firm into the present, voted to bring Eleanor in as senior counsel. Deborah had argued against Eleanor twice, early in her own career, and lost both times, and had never forgotten the name. She did not know about Times Ramos. No one did. That secret Eleanor had kept for 36 years. In a folder. In a drawer. The way you keep a thing you are not yet sure the world has earned the right to know. She said yes to the job. She did not tell them why it mattered to her. She told Deborah she would come to the gala on the 7th place. She came on the 7th. And Bradford Coyle threw a napkin at her. Let's rewind to that evening. Slowly. Because the details matter. Eleanor arrives at 6:40 p.m. 90 minutes early. Because she wants to see the lobby before it fills with people. Specifically, she wants to see one thing. She walks to the wall of plaques. She stands in front of the framed copy of Times Ramos v. Delacroix County, 1989. And she reads the carved line she wrote at 25 times, not a verdict. It is an echo of the coercion that produced it, Times. And she stands there a long moment with her folio against her chest. Inside that folio is the only physical proof that exists, the original 81-page draft, typed on the borrowed machine, with her handwritten edits in the margins, and on the title page, in her own hand. Draft E. Whitfield, July 1989. She has carried it for 36 years. She brought it tonight because tonight, after the introduction, after the handshakes, she had decided she was finally going to walk up to old Bradford Coyle, hand him a photocopy, and watch his face, not to destroy him, just to make him say the name. That was the whole plan. One name, said out loud. After 36 years, she is still standing in front of the plaque when Bradford Coyle crosses the atrium and decides, in under a second, that she is the help. Bradford Coyle is 58. He has been an equity partner for 26 years. His office has a view of the river and a humidor and a framed photo of himself shaking hands with a former governor. He refers to Times Ramos, Times as my case, to the firm as my house, and to the support staff, the cleaners, the caterers, the night security collectively, in an email that will later be read aloud at a Bar Association ethics hearing, as the help who should be seen as little as possible and heard never. He has a way of carrying himself that the younger associates call behind his back. The Coyle glide, times the walk of a man who has never once had to wait for an elevator, or a verdict, or the benefit of the doubt. He has a system, too, though he would never call it that. He can tell counsel from cleaning from across a room with his eyes closed. His own words, said tonight, recorded on Priya Nair's phone at 6:48 p.m. What the system actually keys on is never written down. But Priya Nair has been at the firm 2 years and has watched it operate. She has watched Bradford address a black senior associate by the name of a different black associate twice. She has watched him hand his coat to a visiting attorney from Atlanta who happened to be standing near the closet. She started keeping a document on her personal laptop after the second time. It has 14 entries. The line that becomes a hashtag, times they really will, send anybody times, leaves Bradford's mouth at 6 hours, 49 minutes, and 12 seconds. P. M. The atrium has good acoustics. The firm installed them on purpose. For the toasts, Priya's phone catches all of it. The napkin. The snap of the fingers. The count to 5. Hector, walk this woman out. Eleanor is escorted into the service corridor at 6:52 p.m. She stands by a steel prep table that smells of sterno and lemon cleaner. She does not call her lawyer. She does not call the press. She takes out her phone and she calls one person, Deborah Strand, the managing partner, who is upstairs in her office reviewing the seating chart. Deborah, it's Eleanor. I'm in the catering corridor on the ground floor. One of your partners just had security. Remove me. I think you should come down. There is a silence on the line that lasts 4 full seconds. Eleanor, which time's partner? Bradford Coyle. He thought I was the cleaning crew. He threw a napkin at me and counted to 5. The silence this time is shorter and colder. Then Deborah Strand says one thing: do not move. Do not leave that corridor. I am coming down, and I am bringing the chair of the ethics committee. And I want you to know before I get there that I believe every word. She hangs up. Priya Nair does not stop recording when Hector walks Eleanor out. She keeps the phone low against her hip and follows at a distance. And so she catches the second scene too, the one that ends up in the fullness of time, mattering more than the first. At Shapte, Pais Prezece, Preaz Rubri, M. Deborah Strand comes off the elevator at a near-run Basgas. In a gown, with a man in a tuxedo beside her, Gerald Fitch, 66, chair of the firm's ethics committee, a man who has not run anywhere since 1998. They go straight into the catering corridor. 90 seconds later, they come out. And Eleanor is between them. And Deborah Strand is no longer carrying her own clutch. Gerald is carrying it for her. Because Deborah is carrying Eleanor's folio, holding it in both hands like something that should not be allowed to touch the floor. Bradford Coyle is by the bar. Mid anecdote. Champagne in hand. He sees Deborah coming and rearranges his face into the warm, collegial mask he wears for the committee. Deb, there you are. Listen. Small thing. We had an agency mix-up. Some woman refusing to. Bradford. Deborah's voice does not rise. It does the opposite. It goes very, very quiet. And the whole bar leans in to hear it. Which is exactly what quiet is for. This is Eleanor Whitfield Baez. She is the firm's incoming senior counsel and director of appellate strategy. In 90 minutes, I was going to stand at that podium and introduce her to 400 people as the finest appellate mind this firm has hired in 40 years. A beat? You threw a napkin at her and had Hector walk her out. The bar goes silent. The Coyle glide drains out of Bradford Coyle in real time. His mouth opens. She didn't times say, she told you her name. She told you she was presenting. You counted to 5 at her. Deborah turns to Eleanor. Her voice changes entirely. It warms. It steadies. It becomes the voice you would want introducing you to anyone. Ms. Whitfield Baez, on behalf of this firm, I am ashamed. May I walk you upstairs? Eleanor says, yes, in a moment, and she turns and looks at Bradford Coyle for the first time as an equal in the room. And she says not loudly, not cruelly, just clearly enough for the nus. Yourself the bar to hear the only devastating thing she will say all night. You've thrown things at me before. Mr. Joyle. You just didn't see my hands the first time either. And then she walks to the elevator with Deborah, leaving Bradford Coyle standing at the bar, trying to work out what she means. And not yet, not for another 9 days, understanding that he has been quoting the woman he just had removed for 36 years. Marguerite Okonkwo, by the plaques, watches the elevator doors close. She picks her sparkling water back up off the plinth beneath Times. Ramos. She is smiling a small, terribly vindicated smile that Priya's camera catches over her shoulder. Marguerite does not yet know about the 1989 draft either. But Marguerite clerked in this building in 1971. And she knows the times, shaped times, of what just happened. And she has been waiting 54 years to watch this particular room lose. Priya Nair stops recording. She stands by the bar holding her phone. Then she walks to the firm's empty law library, sits at a carrel under a green lamp, and watches the video 3 times. She thinks about the 14 entries on her laptop. She thinks about the $190. 0 inches loans. She thinks about Eleanor's folio, and the way Deborah Strand carried it like it was made of glass. She uploads the video to a private account at 7:41 p.m. She has 9 followers. Bijedanasce p.m. Lambayarsher. 000 views. By the next afternoon, San. 4 millions. Real talk. What does it on the internet isn't the napkin. Though the napkin is bad, it's the times count. You can hear Bradford Coyle in clean atrium audio, counting 1, 2, 3 at a 61-year-old woman standing perfectly still, holding nothing but a folder. You can hear times they really will send anybody. You can hear the snap of his fingers. People can forgive a mistake. They cannot forgive a man enjoying himself. Number. They really will send. Anybody trends by 9 the next morning. Use 264. 000 times in a day. Almost all of it by people describing the moment a room decided what they were before they spoke. A paralegal in Phoenix, 12 years at my firm. A partner handed me his parking ticket to validate I have a J.D. A retired court reporter in Mobile. I sat in that chair for 30 years, and they still ask me, every week, if I was there to clean the machine. A man in Newark, whose mother had been a legal secretary for 4 decades. Her name was Cora. She drafted half of what those men signed. They spelled her name wrong on her own retirement card. The firm's communications office issues a statement at 10:40 a.m. It is 74 words long. It regrets a misunderstanding between a member of our partnership and a guest at a private event. Holds all members of our community to the highest standards of professionalism, and considers the matter an internal personnel question on which we will not further comment. 74 words. No name. No apology to the person. It calls Eleanor a guest. It does not say she was the firm's own incoming senior counsel. It does not use the word times thrown. It does not use the word times security. The word times black times does not appear, which is its own kind of statement. In a 7-4 Word document about a thing that happened to a black woman, Eleanor releases no statement. But at 8:08 that night, a quiet account belonging to Eleanor Whitfield Baez, which has never posted anything, puts up a single photograph. It is a scan of a typed page old Wime. Smudged. 81 pages. Implied by the number in the corner. The visible paragraph ends with the line everyone in that firm can recite. Not a verdict. It is an echo of the coercion that produced it. In the top margin, in faded blue ink, in a young woman's careful hand, draft E. Whitfield, July 1989. The caption is one sentence. I wrote Times Ramos. I have the drafts. Ask Bradford Coyle whose hands those are. That post is shared 900,000 times in 3 days. By the second morning, a retired appellate clerk who worked at the court in 1990, quote, posts it. We always wondered who actually wrote that brief. It did not read like Coyle. Nothing else he filed ever read like that again. The contempt, Benau, has changed costume, but it has not left the building. This is the thing the firm does not understand yet. The napkin was not the contempt. The napkin was just the part that had a camera on it. The first withdrawal lands at 9:50 a.m. Saturday. Continental Surety, the firm's single largest institutional client, $44 million in annual appellate work. A relationship spanning 19 years sends a 2-sentence letter, pausing all new matters, pending the firm's resolution of the conduct depicted in widely circulated footage. 3 sentences. 19 years. Pause before lunch. By noon, the State Bar's Committee on Professional Responsibility opens an inquiry. Bidvape M. In the law school, where Bradford gives his annual Times Ramos Times lecture indefinitely, postpones the fall talk. Bichterepe M. 2 of the firm's own appellate clients, a wrongful conviction nonprofit, and a tenants' rights coalition. The kind of clients the Times Ramos Times reputation had been built to attract, terminate their engagements outright. Citing an irreconcilable conflict with the values for which we believed this firm stood. Money as gravity. Not vengeance. Eleanor causes none of it. She does no interviews. She drives. On Saturday evening, to a strip mall office. She still keeps the one she opened in 1991 when no big firm would have her, and she sits at the desk where she overturned 41 convictions. And she takes out the 1,989 draft and reads her own 25-year-old sentences. And she does not gloat, because there is no one to gloat to, and because the dominant thing she feels is not triumph, it is grief. 36 years. Tomas never got to see it. Her grandmother never got to see it. The 2 people who sat in rooms while she built doors out of nothing are both gone. And the name is going back on the case too late for either of them to read it. Her phone rings. It is Deborah Strand. Eleanor, I have to ask you something. And you can tell me to go to hell. Is it true? The brief? Every word. A long breath on the line. Then I have a second question. Are you still willing to take the job? Eleanor looks at the draft on the desk. That depends entirely, she says, on what you do about the first question. Imani Brooks is a 50-year-old legal affairs reporter at the Times-Tribune-Times who has been circling Whitlock, Marsh, and Coyle for 8 months. Her tip did not come from the gala. It came in the spring from a former billing partner named Howard Sen, who left the firm in 2023 and told Imani, over coffee, that for years the firm had been running pro bono reputation matters through a billing structure that quietly cross-subsidized them, with inflated charges to paying clients, and that the partner who designed and defended the scheme was Bradford Coyle, who used the Times Ramos, Times Legend, as cover, branding the firm a champion of the wrongly convicted, while, in fact, billing a corporate client $310 an hour for appellate research that was actually law students working unpaid. Howard estimated the overbilling at $2 million across 6 years. Imani had been pulling threads. She had a source inside billing. She had a spreadsheet. She was waiting. She is no longer waiting. On Saturday, she goes to Eleanor's strip mall office. She does not ask for an interview. She lays a folder on the desk. 6 years of redacted billing summaries. The registration documents for the unpaid clerkship pipeline Bradford ran. And a list of 19 names, clerks, and contract attorneys over 20 years who had done the substantive drafting on matters that went out under a partner's signature. 11 of the 19 are people of color. 6 are women. 3 are both. I think there's a pattern, Imani says. I think Times Ramos Times was the first one. I think you were the first one. Eleanor looks at the list for a long time. Then she says, I was not the first. I was just the one whose case got famous. She slides one document back across the desk, the 1,989 letter of recommendation Bradford's firm gave her, the one that misspelled her name. Read the signature. Imani reads it. The recommendation? Glowing. 2 paragraphs. Praising the clerk's exceptional research, support Times support. Not. Authorship is signed by a senior partner. But the drafting credit, the cover memo attached, the routing slip that assigned the Times Ramos Times file to the backroom clerk in the first place, all bear the initials of the associate who supervised her. B. C. He has been doing this, Eleanor says, since before he had a name on the door. The napkin wasn't out of character. Ms. Brooks. The napkin was the most honest thing he's done in 36 years. The counterattack begins Tuesday morning, and it is exactly as ugly as the genre promises. Bradford Coyle retains a crisis litigation boutique that fires off, by Tuesday afternoon, a $9 million defamation demand against Priya Nair, against the Times Tribune Times, which has not published a word, and, most tellingly, against Eleanor, on the theory that her claim of Times Ramos Times authorship is a malicious fabrication designed to extort a position and a settlement. The demand letter insists Eleanor surrender the 1,989 draft for independent forensic authentication by an examiner of Bradford's choosing, which is to say, it asks the only physical proof of her authorship to be handed to the man with the most reason to make it disappear. It also demands that Priya surrender her phone and her laptop, including any documents purporting to record firm personnel interactions, meaning the 14-entry file. Priya gets the letter Tuesday night in her studio apartment. She is 28. She has $190. 0 inches loans and a clerkship reference she now knows she will never get from this firm. She sits on her kitchen floor and shakes for an hour and does not delete a single file. At the same time, the manufactured accounts bloom. 11 of them, created between Monday night and Tuesday evening. 4, with stock photo avatars. 3, with AI-generated faces. The narrative arrives fully formed. Whitfield. Baez planted the confrontation to leverage her contract. The 1,989 draft is a forgery note. The typeface. The typeface. An IBM Selectric Courier, consistent with 1,989, will be authenticated by an independent document examiner the following week. The forgery claim is itself. The forgery. Times Priya Nair is a disgruntled associate passed over for advancement. She was not. She was on track. The screenshots proving otherwise have a metadata timestamp from the day they were fabricated. And then the smear, finds the one place armor doesn't reach. A wire service reporter calls Marguerite Okonkwo, 73, retired judge, the firm's most honored living alumna, on Wednesday, ostensibly to get an elder stateswoman's balanced perspective, and asks her, gently, whether certain times, she saw Bradford throw anything, whether at here in a crowded room. She might have times misremembered. Marguerite is 73. Her voice on the phone does not waver. Young man, I sat on the appellate bench for 22 years. I have watched defense attorneys try to make eyewitnesses doubt their own eyes for a living. I know the technique you are using on me right now, and I knew it before you were born. I saw Bradford Coyle throw a napkin at that woman and count to 5. I saw it with the same eyes that read 10,000 trial records. Now, is there anything times you'd like me to misremember for you? The reporter hangs up. He does not write the story. But Marguerite, after she hangs up, does not feel victorious. She sits at her own kitchen table and she thinks about 1,971. About the 9 years. She was the only one in that building. About every napkin that was thrown at her that did not have a camera on it. And she takes out a sheet of judicial stationery she has no official right to use anymore. And she writes, in a hand that has signed 500 opinions, Eleanor, I should have crossed the floor faster. In 1971, nobody crossed it for me. I am crossing it now. For the record, in writing. To anyone who asks, M. Okonkwo, she has it couriered to Eleanor's strip mall office Thursday morning. Eleanor reads it, standing in the parking lot. It is the thing that decides her on what comes next. That night, Eleanor sits alone in the strip mall office. The smear has called her a forger and a liar and an extortionist in the space of 48 hours. She is 61 years old. She thinks, for the first time since the atrium, about whether putting the name back is worth what it is costing. The 28-year-old who filmed it and the 73-year-old who is being asked to doubt her own eyes. She puts her head down on the desk where she overturned 41 convictions. On top of the 81 pages she wrote when she was 25. And her grandmother's voice comes back one more time. From the corner of a windowless room, over a bowl of shelled peas, the day you pick up what they throw. You've agreed with them, so don't pick it up. Baby, make them pick it up. This is the floor. From here it goes, one way. The turn comes Friday. And it does not come from Eleanor. It comes from the last person in the building anyone expects, Gerald Fitch. 66. Chair of the Ethics Committee. The man who carried Deborah's clutch. Gerald has been at the firm 31 years. He made partner 2 years after Bradford. He has spent 3 decades being the firm's conscience in the narrow, bloodless way that ethics committee chairs are allowed to be a conscience quietly, procedurally, never at the cost of a billing relationship. He has known about the Ramos Times drafting for a long time. Not the whole of it, but enough. In 1989, he was a third-year associate down the hall from the windowless room. And he saw the lights on at 3 a.m. And he saw who was under them. And he saw the brief go out under Bradford's signature. And he said nothing. Because he was 29, and on track, and the man it would have cost him was going to be a partner. He has carried that for 36 years. The napkin is what makes it unbearable. On Friday morning, Gerald Fitch walks into the Times-Tribune's offices with a banker's box. Inside, the firm's 1,989 case assignment log, which he had kept a personal copy of, showing the Ramos Times file routed to Clerk E. Whitfield on May 22. 1989, with no associate touching it until the brief was complete. A 1990 internal memo on firm letterhead, in which a senior partner privately credits our summer clerk's extraordinary work on Ramos and suggests we find a way to bring her on a memo that was never acted on, never shown to Eleanor, and initialed at the bottom, received and noted, with the initials times B, C, and the email, the one Imani had heard rumors of but never seen, sent 11 days ago, the morning after the gala, before the video had fully broken from Bradford Coyle to two other senior partners. Subject line times damage control, the cleaning woman. The body in full is greater than the woman from last night is apparently Strand's new hire. Doesn't matter. She has no standing to claim anything about Ramos. There is no contemporaneous record with her name on it because I made sure of that in '89. It is her word against 36 years of mine. Keep the messaging on misunderstanding. Do not acknowledge the firm ever employed her in any drafting capacity. And find out what that paralegal nair has on her phone. B. I made sure of that in '89. There it is. Not a confession of a bad night. A confession of a 36-year erasure. In his own words. Typed 11 days ago. By a man who still 11 days after the napkin could only see Eleanor as times the cleaning woman. The contempt of the atrium and the contempt of the cover-up are the same contempt. He never stopped. He just usually remembered to keep it off email. Imani Brooks verifies the headers in 3 hours. She publishes Friday at 6:30 p.m. The headline. The clerk who wrote Times Ramos. How Whitlock. Marsh and Coyle built 40 years on a name it erased. The story is 800 words. It runs the case log. The 1990 memo. The I made sure of that in '89 email. The document examiner's authentication of the 1989 draft. The 19-name pipeline. The $2 million billing scheme. And Marguerite Okonkwo's signed statement. It runs a photograph of the 1989 draft beside the bronze plaque in the lobby. The carved line and the typed line, side by side. Identical. 36 years apart. By midnight, the Times Tribune Times server has crashed twice. It is the most read story in the paper's history. Bradford Coyle's name comes off the door on Saturday. Not resigns to pursue other opportunities. The firm's release, drafted by Deborah Strand over the objection of the Crisis Boutique, uses the words Times expelled from the partnership for cause. And Times the firm acknowledges that Eleanor Whitfield Baez is the author of the 1989 Ramos brief. And the word Times erased. The State Bar refers Bradford for disbarment proceedings on the billing scheme, and the Times I made sure of that Times email both. The $9 million defamation demand is withdrawn Sunday in light of new information. Priya Nair's loans are gone within a day. Paid off by a fund the Times Tribune's readers set up faster than anyone can quite track. The firm offers Eleanor a settlement Saturday afternoon. $4 million. A private apology. A confidentiality clause. And a single line of authorship acknowledgement buried in a press release. Eleanor reads it at the strip mall desk. She makes 3 calls. Her late husband's sister, Deborah Strand, Imani Brooks, and at 5 p.m. she sends back 1 page. It is not a counteroffer. It is a list. Is greater than. I will not take the $4 million. My name was not for sale in 1989, and it is not for sale now. Is greater than, instead, 大于 E. The bronze plaque in the lobby is recast. Under the carved line, it will read, Ramos v. Delacroix County, 1989. Brief, authored by Eleanor Whitfield. Summer Law Clerk. My name? Not support. Author. 大于 R. Every clerk and contract attorney on the 19 name list whose substantive work went out under another lawyer's signature receives written authorship acknowledgement in the firm's records and a personal letter, signed by the managing partner. The ones still living are offered it in person. The ones who have died are credited to their families. 大于 San. The $2. $2 million in overbilling is repaid to the affected clients in full, and the unpaid clerkship pipeline is dissolved. Clerks are paid. Their names go on their work. 大于 4. A fellowship is endowed at my old law school, the one whose scholarship covered tuition and nothing else for students who, like I did, are working 2 jobs to cover the nothing else. It is named for my grandmother, Adelaide Whitfield, who could not read a word of what I wrote but knew exactly what it was. 大于 5. I will take the senior counsel position, not for the title, because someone has to make sure the next E, Whitfield in the backroom stack, gets her name on her own door, and I would rather it be me than another 40 years of luck. 大于 6. Bradford Coyle is not to be contacted, pursued, or harassed by me, or on my behalf. He will face the bar, and his own email, and his own mirror. I am not interested in him. I never was. I only ever wanted the name said out loud. Is greater than Eleanor Whitfield Baez. The management committee accepts all 6 conditions by Sunday noon. The vote is unanimous. The plaque is recast in 3 weeks. The firm unveils it on a Tuesday morning, in the lobby, with no press and no podium, because Eleanor refuses a ceremony. There are 9 people there. Deborah Strand is there. Gerald Fitch is there, standing a little apart. The way a man stands when he has finally done a right thing 36 years late and knows it does not buy back the 36 years. Priya Nari is there, no longer an associate, but a named appellate fellow now. The first in a program Eleanor insisted on, wearing a suit she bought with the first paycheck that wasn't going to a loan. Margarita Conquo was there. 73. In the blue, she wore to her own swearing-in 50 years ago. She has driven herself, slowly, and she has brought in her purse a thing she will not show anyone, a still frame, printed at a drugstore, from the gala video herself, by the plaques, the only one standing, while the room sat. She does not need to show it. She knows what she did. She knows, too, what it was worth, and that it was worth more than $4 million, and that no recast plaque will ever say her name either, and that she crossed the floor anyway. Finally, for the record, and there is one more person, in the back, in a wheelchair, 61 years old himself now, and gray Emilio Ramos, the man who was 19 and convicted on a 14-hour confession, who went free in 1990 because of 81 pages written in a windowless room, who never knew, for 36 years, the name of the person who wrote them. Imani Brooks found him. He came. Eleanor walks to the wall. She does not give a speech. She reaches up. She is not tall. She has to reach, and she pulls the cloth off the recast plaque. The carved line is the same. A conviction built on a coerced confession is not a verdict. It is an echo of the coercion that produced it. And underneath it now, in bronze, in letters that will outlast every person in the lobby. Hummusville, Delacroix County. 1989. Brief, authored by Eleanor Whitfield. Summer law clerk. Emilio Ramos. In the back. Makes a sound that is not quite a word. Eleanor crosses the lobby to him. She crosses the floor. The whole width of it. The same marble she was marched across 3 weeks ago. And she crouches down to his level. And she takes his hand, and the two of them look at the plaque together for a long time without saying anything. The woman who built the door, and the man who walked through it. Meeting, for the first time after 36 years, he says, "Finally, I always wondered whose words those were." She says, "Mine. They were always mine." No one in the lobby speaks. No one needs to. The folio with the 1989 draft is in a glass case now. Beside the plaque. Open to the title page. Draft E. Whitfield. July 1989. The blue ink faded but legible. The careful hand of a 25-year-old who worked 2 jobs and wrote at 3 a.m. and was thanked with a misspelled letter. Outside. On the avenue. The morning light comes down between the buildings the way it always has. The same light that came through no window at all, into a back room in 1989. The light has not changed. The marble has not changed. The carved line has not changed. Only the name under it has changed. And the name is enough. Real talk. Eleanor Whitfield Baez could have taken the $4 million and the apology and walked. And no one on earth would have blamed her. 36 years. A husband who died before the name went up. A grandmother who shelled peas in the corner of a windowless room and never got to read a word. She didn't take it. She stayed. She made them pay the clerks. She made them say 19 names. Not just hers. She named the fellowship after the woman who couldn't read the brief, but knew what it was. And she crossed the same marble floor she'd been marched across to crouch down and hold the hand of a man who'd been free for 36 years and never knew whose words had freed him. And Marguerite Okonkwo, 73, the only one who stood up in a room full of people who sat crossed her own floor, finally, in writing, for the record, nobody crossed it for her in 1971. She crossed it anyway. That's the part that doesn't make the headline. The contempt didn't start with a napkin, and it won't end with a plaque. Somewhere tonight, in some other lobby, in some other back room, someone is being handed a rag, or a parking ticket, or a file no one else wanted, and being told, with a smile, that the room can tell counsel from cleaning with its eyes closed. Sometimes the room is wrong. Sometimes the person holding the rag wrote the case on the wall. If you've ever had something thrown at you by someone who decided what you were before you spoke, drop one word in the comments. We'll know what it means. And if this moved you, share it with someone who's still waiting for a room to learn how to read their hands. Her name was Eleanor Whitfield. It's on the wall now. Say it.